Hello and welcome to Prince George Up Close. I'm your host, Grant Bichond. This is the show where we sit down with this community's movers and shakers and leaders to find out what's going on in our community here in Prince George. Today, I'm very excited to have our Mayor, Lynn Hall, in. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, Grant. Good to be here. Good to be back. I think one of my first interviews when I became mayor was with you.
And you're our first returning guest as well.
Well, good. Okay.
First guest and first returning guest.
Excellent. Good to be returning.
So it's been a while since we sat down and talked, and I think what's really good is to kind of find out how things have been going. Like, how has things been for this last year for yourself and for City Hall?
Well, I think I can sum it up really in one word. It's been very exciting. And we've had what I think is a great 2017. And really, I think the last 3 years we've accomplished a lot. There's still more to do, but we're all very excited and I think pleased about where we're at.
And looking back on 2017, as you said, it's been a crazy year. One of the most recent news that City Hall brought out, and I think is very exciting as someone who's been here since I was 4 years old, downtown housing, something that I think one comment in the media said 30 years they've been trying to do this. So tell me a little bit about this downtown housing project that's going on right now.
Well, that's a great project and you're absolutely right. I've been in Prince George about 35 years and there's been conversation about trying to get residential living downtown for that long. And we're really excited about the fact that we're going to have about 160 unit condo development downtown on the old Norgate Ed DeLorme garage site. And I think that it's really going to improve what we're seeing happening downtown even at this point with the number of restaurants and the number of small breweries that are cropping up. And also the UNBC Wood Research Laboratory. So all of this combined with having residents downtown I think is going to spur on even more development. The real positive piece about having residential development downtown is that it's going to create opportunity for people to open up small businesses. And I think that you start to generate more of a buzz downtown. And let's not forget, and I know we'll talk about it, but the new Four Seasons pool as well. So,
you know, I hear this and I'm thinking to myself, the first question that came to mind is, what was the difference this time? Because this conversation has been going on for 30 years. Why was this time different that we were able to finally build a project?
Well, for us it was about A&T, the company that built Riverbend. That was a conversation I had with the ownership group of A&T back in 2015, and we got Riverbend built, which was a real priority to get seniors housing here in Prince George and another option for seniors. And from that it just led to other conversations about potential development in the city. And one of the things that we said to many developers, and including A&T, was we're really interested in trying to find development housing opportunities for students, but we'd also like to do something for market housing downtown. And here we are. We talked about it a lot. It's been about 1.5 years in the works. And here it is now. We managed to announce that in our last meeting of 2017. So I think it's just conversation. It's just finding an opportunity that works for everybody, and this one did.
And so with this announcement, there was also announcement with City Hall that you guys were giving an incentive program. 250 doors were going to be funded by this. And this project, I believe, is, you said 160 units are going to be going out. So does this mean future developments now are going to be funded with this incentive program?
Well, the incentive program is something that's driven by the city, but also with Northern Development Initiatives Trust, NDIT. And it's been around for quite some time, and it gives us an opportunity, I think, to be more competitive in the marketplace when it comes to attracting developers to our community, or even local developers. There's an opportunity for them to utilize this incentive program. So this particular project will have that program in place, and we think that we'll still have opportunity to, to have extend the incentive program to developers as well that are interested in doing something else from a residential perspective in the city.
And so obviously, I mean, you just announced it, so it's a long ways away probably, but I know I was talking with some people at university and they were saying, well, when can we start buying into this? There's already young people who are excited about this. What's the horizon on this project?
Well, we'll start construction in the spring on the parkade portion of it, and I would think that the construction on the actual phase 1 and 2 of the buildings will probably be very early in 2019. But you bring bring up a good point, Grant. That was part of the market that we really were interested in, being able to provide housing. So we see students that are going to UNBC or CNC, they're going to have an opportunity to get into these condo developments, and that was really key for us, and we'd love to see them move into that new project. We think it's ideal for them. It's ideal for people who work downtown. It's ideal for people who are wanting to downsize and they want to live in the downtown core. And as I said, I think that will spur on other business.
So this is sort of a one step in probably a lot of steps, hopefully in the future, a snowball effect. One of the things that you mentioned, you briefly talked about was student housing. And I know student housing, especially being at the UNBC, has been a conversation for a while. Are we seeing any headway on this issue? Are we seeing opportunities for a student dormitory maybe downtown or something?
Well, we were very close. It didn't come about, but we're still having conversations with UNBC and CNC. There's no question there's a need for it. Whether it's on campus or off campus, there's still a need. And so we haven't left that rock sort of tucked away. We're still kicking it around and trying to see what we can do. But it's also going to require a partnership, I think, with the province, particularly when you're looking at working within the post-secondary institution groups and advanced education. There's pieces there that we need to satisfy, but it's still very much alive, and it's just whether or not we can put it together.
And so downtown has obviously seen a lot of changes, and I think one of the biggest changes has been the nightlife. When you look at it, what is some of the big factors that have created this downtown change with all the new restaurants and everything?
I think it was a group of young entrepreneurs that wanted to try something different. So if we start over with Nancy O's and Owen Foley and his team, and bringing in Batella Burning, and I think another big piece of this was when Homeworks came back downtown after their devastating fire, and then we saw Crossroads Brewing, and then we saw the Cask, so there's a number of young entrepreneurs that are very aggressive and wanting to make a change downtown, and I think that's really how it started. And then you take a look at what the other amenities are, and a number of restaurants that, I could go on and on all day about the number of restaurants downtown, but it does create a buzz. And that's what you want to have happen downtown. So I know the nightlife has really expanded. We're seeing a different style and a different type of nightlife, but it's really what you're seeing in some of the major communities of our province. And these folks have really hit a niche that was missing here in Prince George.
And I think one of the biggest things of 2017 was this referendum that happened. The referendum was a major infrastructure, basically asking for money to approve Fire Hall #1 and the rebuilding of Four Seasons Pool. What was the process with this referendum? Why was this important that we went to a referendum, not just approve this at City Council meeting?
We had a facilities audit done on all of our facilities. And we recognized very early on that the two that were in probably the worst condition were Four Seasons Pool and Fire Hall #1. To add to that, we had a standards of coverage review done on the fire halls, and it was clearly identified in that report that Fire Hall #1 was not in a good location. It needed to be moved, and there was a location that was identified that would be optimal. So we had a lot of discussion around the council table, and the decision was to move forward with a referendum. We were wanting to borrow $50 million, 15 for the fire hall, 35 for the pool, and we felt very strongly about going to referendum to get the residents to let us know if there was support for it. During the referendum process, of course, we got out to try to answer as many questions as we could. We had an on-site day at the pool, an on-site day at the fire hall. We went to the new location of the fire hall over by the Y, just so people could get a sense of what we were trying to do. We talked about why we wanted to go to a referendum. We talked about why these two locations, these two sites were in dire need of replacement, just so that we could provide more education for the electorate, so that they could really make a more informed decision. And as you saw the outcome, I think it was about 82 or 83% for the fire hall and about 62% for the pool. So we're moving forward with that, and I think 2018 will probably be made up of a lot of planning for those two sites. But the referendum, it was just important for council to go to the electorate on.
Is it because there is a feeling that it's a lot of money and it's going to affect taxes quite a bit?
Well, it is a lot of money, and certainly when you're looking at a borrowing of $50 million, plain and simply put, council just felt more comfortable going out and getting the citizens of the city to let us know how they felt about it, and to make a decision without going to referendum for $50 million, I think would have been short-sighted, and we really wanted to make that make it clear to the folks that we need your point of view and your position on these two projects.
And City Hall did tons of outreach, and I even remember you guys coming up to UNBC. You did other meetings around the community. What was some of the feedback? What was some of the things that the community was saying to you during that consultation period?
Well, I think the biggest thing was for the fire hall, can you tell us more about why you need to relocate it? What is meant by the standards of coverage? And for us, it was a public safety piece. So we talked a lot about response time. We talked about access to Highway 16 and 97 from the proposed location. With the pool, it was around why do you want to keep the pool downtown? Can you not take the pool and build a smaller one in College Heights and a smaller one in the Heart? Why do you want to leave it downtown? Why do you want to put it in the Days Inn location? And so those were a number of questions. The other, of course, was financial. So how will this impact our taxes? And we laid that out for everyone as well, what the financial impact was on homes of roughly $300,000, and incrementally, how would that impact as your home if you had a $400,000 home or $500,000 home. So those were some of the major questions. And of course, when you talk about moving the fire hall, why in that location, as I said, that was a big question. But for us, it was a public safety and response time piece.
I want to kind of ask that question. Why did we want to rebuild the pool in the downtown core? Like, that seems like, obviously it goes in hand with your talk about revitalization, but was there other reasons?
Well, I think that was probably the primary one. We get about 100 to 115,000 visits in that pool a year. That draws people downtown. And we just felt that by maintaining the pool downtown, it was another attraction. We were at least getting people into an area of downtown that maybe those folks would spend time at the pool, and maybe they would find an opportunity to go over to one of the restaurants, do some shopping downtown. So that's why we wanted to maintain that pool in the downtown location. It was much easier for us to move it into the Days Inn area than it was to try to build in its current location. Had we wanted to build in the current location, we would have been without that particular pool for a couple of years, and we just didn't have the capacity at the Aquatic Center to handle all of the visits in one pool for a 2-year period.
Looking at 2017 and just looking at this council term, I think I look back and I see a lot of things that have been successes. I think there's been a lot of interesting things that happened. Obviously, renaming Clayton Lake to name Memorial Park was a big one. The Pride crosswalks, and you have the Canada Winter Games. What are some of the things when you look back you kind of think that was a really big challenge, but also a really big success?
Well, I think two things. One is the Canada Winter Games in 2015, I think, put this city on the national map. We proved to a number of folks who visited us, we proved to national organizations that we have the capacity, both from a volunteer perspective and a facility perspective, to put on these kinds of events. And that has gone a long ways, because now it's resulted in the 2019 Para-Nordic Games that are going to be held here at Otway, and that's an international event. The wildfires and the evacuation that we had here in Prince George, with over 10,000 people coming to our city, those are two big events. And I think in both instances, Grant, it showed that we had the ability to really step to the plate. And as I said, both from a volunteer, from an administrative perspective, and I think we did just a fantastic job on both, and that's gone a long ways to put Prince George on that map.
You talk about the wildfires. What is this? Obviously the wildfires are going to have a major impact in the Caribou and other communities like Quesnel and Williams Lake and everything, but Prince George is going to have an impact as well. What is, not maybe the fire, but what is the emergency responses? You talked about that as being one of the priorities of 2018, is being more emergency preparedness. What does that mean? What does that mean for Prince George?
Well, it means that we have to be vigilant on two fronts. One is we have to absolutely be prepared to take in evacuees, but we have to be prepared to be evacuated. When the Fort McMurray fires hit, there was a lot of discussion about communities like Fort McMurray, and interestingly enough, Prince George was picked out of a grouping of cities that had much the same landscape as Fort McMurray, and if you take a look around, it's pretty obvious. So we have to be certainly very vigilant, and we have to be prepared for either scenario. One of the things that we're going to take a look at is creating a position where it's a full-time position where that person is specifically going to deal with both scenarios. And we are prepared, and we prove that we're prepared. We've got a great emergency service plan in place. We have a great emergency operations team in place. And those are things that you need to be absolutely vigilant about.
And so I guess this means that we're just going to having a more conversation of how we can be ready in case Prince George has any sort of fire in our area.
Absolutely. I mean, we're ready now, but I think what we're looking at doing is really fine-tuning that, and we saw and have learnt from what has taken place in Cache Creek, 100 Mile House, and Williams Lake when they've had to evacuate. And there's been, there's a sort of a post-mortem going on now throughout the province. With many organizations, and we're part of that. And that will go a long ways in helping us and many other communities in the province. This is, and we've heard this from emergency services, that this is one of the biggest events that has happened where you've had such a devastating impact on so many communities in such a wide area of the province.
Does this make you personally more cognizant of the impacts of climate change, looking at 2017 fires and everything?
Yeah, if you take, absolutely. That may have brought it home more than anything to a lot of people. But if you take a look at what's transpired over the years, and I've lived in the north most of my life, and you see the fluctuation in temperatures, you see the fluctuation in snowfall and rainfall, and particularly for me, it's over the winter when you see such a change in climate, but you see a change in the fact that we get rain. We can get rain in February. We can get temperatures that we've not seen for many, many years, whether it be on the plus or the negative side. So it really hit home in a number of respects when we had all of those evacuees, and there were some very, very troubling and very sad stories. And so it really did hit home for a lot of us, and it was a very sobering time.
You know, I think one of the biggest things that came out of the wildfires as well was a sort of, it manifested in a bumper sticker, but I think everyone felt this sort of BC pride sort of thing. And one of the things that you talked about during your election campaign, I remember we had this conversation, is about pride in Prince George. Do you see, are we more proud now? Are we a more proud community of being in Prince George?
I think we are. I think we're very proud of Prince George. I know I certainly am. I know you are, and I think we are. I think the other thing that I feel in our community is that there's such a positive buzz about it. And there are a lot of things, Grant, that we still need to do. There are a lot of things that are on that shopping list. But I think for me, it's the positive feeling in our community. It's that positive buzz that's going on. We're seeing a lot of things change in our city. I think we're really on the cusp of, and I've said this before, becoming a big city. We're 74,000 people, and we are a big city, but we're changing. We're a much more multicultural community than ever before. A lot of that I chalk up to UNBC, CNC, University of Northern British Columbia Hospital. There's just, those kind of amenities attract, I think, that kind of positive feel. And it's exciting. It's exciting for me, and I think exciting for council. I
think when we hear, I don't think there's any doubt that there's pride in the community now. It's definitely changed. But one of the things I wonder is, why aren't we growing though? Like, why aren't we really reaching 80, 90, 100,000 people?
And I would say, if I could just go back for a moment, Grant, I would say that we've always, and people who live here have always been proud of this city. So I just see, I see it manifesting itself differently. When I was during the election campaign early on, I think we were at about 72,000 people. Stats Canada came out about a year and a half later. We're at about 74,000. People ask, why all of the development if we're not growing? So I take the 74,000 and I think, all right, if that's what they tell us our population is, fair enough. I get a sense that we're a bit more than that, just given what's going on in the community. And growth is all about what we can draw into our community from an economic development perspective. So we see, I think, more young people staying here and going to university. Their opportunities are greater for work. Their opportunities are greater to enjoy the recreation that we have. House prices are manageable and affordable. I think we're seeing seniors stay here because we've offered more amenities to seniors. They may go away in the winter, but they come home in the spring and spend the summer. Our Economic Development Office is working diligently with major companies to get them to Prince George, where we would see employment increase. And that's really the foundation that that department is working on, and that's part of the strategy. And it takes time. There's no question. It takes time.
Does it mean we need to, like, I guess when you look at an economic development perspective, there's sort of this idea, like, do we need to get a big thing to come to Prince George to boom it, or do we need to revitalize our that localism conversation? Is it?
I think it's always nice to have that big thing come to your community. So if you look at a data storage center, a large steel fabricating company where they may employ 50, 60, 70 people, that's big. But if you take a look at other communities, they're also focusing in on, as we are, those companies that would employ 15 to 20 people. And not necessarily your mom and pop store, but just smaller operations, secondary industry that may provide to the natural resource sector. And as I said, they employ 15 to 20 people. The magnitude and multiplying of effect on your community is quite great if you can get companies like that. And we've seen some come to Prince George. So we'll continue to work on that. And there's no question, I'd love to see a company come to town that employs 100 people. And that's still on the list as well.
Let's shift gears a little bit. And so, obviously, Prince George doesn't live in a bubble. We have a new provincial government here, the New Democrats, and that has a lot of impacts on municipalities. That has a lot of impacts on this re-election campaign and the next municipal election. No more corporate or union donation. That's a big. Is that a big thing, or is that not? Is that just not a thing that we're really need to worry about?
I don't know. I don't think it's as big a thing for municipal politics as it is perhaps for provincial. Those of us that run, you try to raise as much money as you can, and yes, you get corporate donations. But I think now what you're looking at is more individual donations. You change your focus, and you start to go to folks that can, donate $300-400. $10, whatever it might be. So it'll make it a little bit more difficult, I suppose. But I don't see the constraint and the change are going to be that impactful on municipal elections.
How has been the relationship with the provincial government? What's it like now with the new government in place?
Well, they haven't been in that long, and certainly during the wildfire evacuation process, we saw a number of ministers here. The Premier was up to visit. And so we've had some pretty close contact as a result of that with the Minister of Forests and other ministries that were involved in that. And of course, there was a group of 9 of us that met with the Premier not long ago to talk about what goes on in the North. And I think for each one of us that are from a Northern community, we just want to make sure that we get to know who they are and see what direction they're going in, because you're absolutely right. Change of governments at any level affect municipalities. And that's sort of our course of action. We've got a number of things that are on the plate that require the province and the federal government to come to the table with us, and specifically around infrastructure projects. And we're looking at seeing whether or not there's any dollars for the pool. So that involves a connection with the federal government, but also the province. So, we're doing what we can and working very closely with both levels of government, as any municipality would do.
Let me ask you about that, because when Justin Trudeau ran for the federal position there, he talked a lot about giving lots of infrastructure money to municipalities. Did that ever manifest in Prince George?
We've got some infrastructure dollars. And when you talk about a lot, we're going after a lot of infrastructure dollars for the pool. and we're working consistently with the federal government. They've got infrastructure packages that are available, but they're specific to various projects. They're specific to timelines, and we're having to work within that. So, you know, we just keep plowing away and see what we can do.
Exactly.
I feel pretty good about the fact that we've seen some infrastructure dollars, and I hope we see more. But it's about creating those relationships, and it's about getting the message to those two levels of government about what you're trying to do in your community. And that in itself is the bulk of the work.
I guess kind of want to look finally to kind of what's 2018 going to be like. Where there's an election in October, so obviously there's going to be eventually a campaign that will start up, and from what I understand, you're running for re-election.
Yeah, I'm going to run again.
Okay, yes. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be going on for you personally, but also for City Hall. What's 2018 hold for the citizens of Prince George and for yourself?
Well, there's still some projects. I think you know, I would really like us to be able to see a seniors housing project in the heart. We have some infrastructure work that we're going to continue to do, which is really the day-to-day operational stuff of the city. But there's still pieces that we really want to make sure are in place. You talked earlier about student housing. That's still on the list. We're still looking at trying to attract through our Economic Development Office opportunities with different companies to relocate or to establish themselves here in Prince George. So there's the you know, the economy piece, and I think 2018 will probably still be busy. We're going to see a lot of planning for the pool and the fire hall, and I mentioned earlier the construction for the parkade for the new condo unit, and yeah, we may have one or two announcements in the wind for 2018 as well. We've got some stuff that have carried over from 2017, and we hope that we can make announcements on that. The other thing that I would say is that take a look at you know, our downtown area, the corner of 15th Avenue and Victoria, where the Connaught Motor Inn is. That's an important piece of property for us. I'd really like to see that be developed. It's a cornerstone of our access to downtown. It's a busy intersection. I'd like to see something go in there. So we just continue to do our day-to-day work and look at larger projects, and I think 2018, as I said, will probably be as busy a year, but maybe in a little different way.
And probably a lot of public outreach, I would assume, being that not just with the election, but probably with this planning process with the pool and everything.
Yeah, we committed to making sure that the public were kept informed about every step of the way. So once the planning piece starts, there'll be work done there within the community. We want people to know what that new pool and what that new fire hall will look like. So there's that public outreach, you're absolutely right, will continue. We won't be holding Talktober events this year because of the election.
Yeah.
And so whatever mayor and council are in place in 2018 after October 20th, we'll make the decision about how that continues, and I certainly hope that it does.
And I guess my final point here, my final question is, when you look at everything that's been done since you were elected to now, what's something you want to highlight? What's the one thing you want to let people in Prince George go away with from this interview?
Well, beyond the development, which I'm very proud of the river bend and very proud of the condo unit that's going and all of the development. I think for me, though, it's when I was running, I talked about wanting council to reconnect to the community. And for me, that's one of the biggest highlights. I think through our Talktober events, certainly through the referendum and all of the outreach that we've been doing. Our new website, for example, is much more friendly for users. I'm very proud of that, and it stands out. Only because it was an opportunity for us, as I said, to reconnect to the community and to, I think, give residents more information about not just what council are doing, but what our city is doing overall from an operational perspective. And I am very, very pleased about that and excited that we were able to put that in place, and I'm excited about it continuing. And everywhere you went, people talked about, look, we just want more communication. We want to know more about what's happening, and I think we've provided that.
Well, thank you, Mayor Hall. I appreciate you coming
Grant.
on.
Yeah,
it's great talking to you anytime.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Our thanks to Mayor Lynn Hall. Let me know who you want to see come on the show by tweeting me at Grant Bichond. Also go to facebook.com/pgupclose. Till next time, thanks for watching.